So welcome everybody. Tonight I'm going to be talking about fulfillment and satisfaction in the workplace. It's something that, according to which study you look at, between 25% and 45% of Americans have, which means that over half of Americans either are not employed or they're employed in a job that they don't particularly enjoy and don't get much satisfaction from. And so my intention over the next hour or so is to talk about why I think it's really important to find satisfaction in your work, ways in which you can find satisfaction in your work. I don't do the 7-step thing, the 5 steps, the 10 tips. I do more of a holistic, whole form approach. So it's something that you got to kind of stay with towards the end. I hope that's okay with everyone. I don't really think there's a magic bullet that I can give you that tomorrow you're going to wake up, go to work reinvigorated, and life's going to be a bowl of cherries. But I do think it's a significant way in which you can begin to filter the world and look through the world and begin to look for opportunities in which you can both make a contribution and be really satisfied and fulfilled in the workplace. So does that sound good to you? All right. There we go. So this is me, Dennis Charles, not of Massachusetts, but many years ago, I got a master's degree in educational psychology. And why me talking about careers? I was thinking today how many different careers I've had, because a lot of the studies at the moment are talking about the class of 2012 having between 12 and 20 distinct careers. So I was looking back at the jobs that I've had, and I've been an ice cream salesman. I've been a newspaper delivery boy. I've worked on a market stall selling electronics, worked on a market stall selling fruit and veg, worked on a market stall selling vinyl LPs, if anyone remembers back to those days, a market stall selling women's clothing. I've worked as a part-time professional musician, a DJ in a nightclub, a forklift truck driver, a factory worker, a factory supervisor, a soccer referee, a nightclub bouncer. I don't think I'm missing anything out. Then I kind of went into the workplace as proper, as a high school gym teacher. So I was a phys ed teacher for a couple of years. And then I ended up running a program for my local authority in the UK. I then came over to America to become a professional sports coach. Did that 3 seasons of the year and supplemented my income doing various things like limousine driving, pizza delivery, putting together quizzes for TV shows, putting together questions for TV shows. And finally, I've ended up doing what I do now, which is helping people find a career in which they can have success, be passionate about, get satisfaction and get fulfillment. So I do have some experience from the workplace. Some of those jobs I had for 2 or 3 days. Some of them were long-term, much more long-term. I've been fired from a number of jobs, quit a number of jobs, started up 5 or 6 businesses at this point, of which 4 failed dismally. Luckily, 2 were extraordinarily successful. So that's kind of what brought me here to talk about careers. And if you want to find out more information about my stuff, charlescareers.com is my website. So as I said, we're going to talk about the links between success, satisfaction, and fulfillment. And I think there's really one thread that goes between the 3 of those. And it's about the ability to be able to filter the world in a particular way. Now, does that make sense to anybody? It's about not so much about looking to see the glass half full or the glass half empty, but filtering the world for opportunities and looking through the world for opportunities. Like some people wake up in the morning, the newspaper drops down, they get the Globe, they head down, they pick the Globe up and skip over the business section, head straight to the sports section, just read about the Celtics. They see the Celtics games on at 7:05, set the TiVo, head off to work for a job they don't enjoy, come back, get to watch the Celtics game, then go to bed. Okay, that's filtering the world in a particular way. That's kind of ignoring what you're doing during the day so you can have some fun and satisfaction maybe in the evenings and the weekends. Whereas another person who wake up in the morning, see the Boston Globe, look at it, open up the business section and see an article that catches their interest. We live in an area full of techies and tech people. I was in a really interesting tech conversation today, which was way over my head, but some of the stuff fascinates me. But this is one of the areas in the Metro West that we have here. So someone opens up and they see a story talking about a particular startup internet company that they'd heard about on the news a couple of weeks beforehand. And rather than skipping through it, they go, what can I do with this information? So they then go online and find out some more information about this particular company. Start looking to see if anybody that they know has heard anything about this. Call up a couple of friends, have some conversations. And before they know it, they're moving towards a particular type of career because they're filtering the world completely differently. There's a pair of 10-year-old twins. One's name's Peter and one's name's Oliver. And their dad is kind of frustrated with Peter and Oliver because Peter is extraordinarily pessimistic. Whatever happens to Peter, he's just not happy. Like, Dad will buy him some good stuff, buy him some fun stuff. Peter's just, Dad, you have to. Oliver's the opposite. Oliver's extraordinarily optimistic. In any bad situation, he gets left behind by his father. He sees it as an opportunity to learn how to get home on his own. Well, the dad's getting a little frustrated. He thinks, the kids should be the same, and you want to teach these kids some lessons. So for their 10th birthday, he says, right, I'm going to teach these kids a lesson. So he buys, for Peter, the pessimistic kid, buys him a top-of-the-line, brand new, shiny racing bike and puts it up in his room while Peter's asleep. He says, this has got to be the thing that, he sees this thing, it's going to really, change his ways, change his views on the world. But for Oliver, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, while he's asleep, fill his bedroom full of horse manure. So the morning comes around, Dad's waiting downstairs, and he hears a lot of bouncing around, he hears a lot of crying. He says, well, it must have worked. So he goes up to see Peter, and he opens the door, and he sees sobbing. Dad! 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 It's my birthday, and I got this racing bike. And Dad goes, what, aren't you pleased? Dad, but you don't understand that if I take it to school, it's gonna get dirty and ruined, and I'm gonna tie it up, and it's gonna get stolen, and then I'm not gonna have a bike at all, and I'm gonna be really upset. Dad's just at this point pulling his hair out, says, I'm never gonna be able to teach this boy. But figures, well, at least optimistic Oliver, there's no way that he can see the bright side of the horse manure. So he comes into the room, big pile of horse manure. All he can see is just the manure flying up in the air. And a little boy's voice going, tee-hee-hee, tee-hee-hee, tee-hee-hee. And Dad's really frustrated by this point. So he said, what are you doing back there? He said, Dad, don't you get it? With all this manure here, there's bound to be a pony in here somewhere. We've all learned to filter the world either through these two pretty long words, excitatory or inhibitory. Excitatory is the time when everything's going right for you. You wake up in the morning, the sun's shining, the radio's playing your favorite song, cat comes over, sits next to you. And just like this, you could do anything, right? Life's perfect. You know it's going to be a great day. You got some meetings ahead of you, but they're going to be fine. You're going to be off to the Red Sox game in the evening. Right? What's happening is your brain is firing the excitatory neurons. And there's a chemical cocktail that runs through your body. And like this, you can achieve anything. So you get into the car, but instead of it being sunny, it clouds over. It starts to rain, and then you get a flat tire, and you're going to be late for your meeting. All of a sudden, those excitatory neurons close down. They get shut down. And you start looking at all the things that are going to go wrong and all the things that you're not going to have. You're going to be late for the meeting. Boss is going to be upset. You're going to have to get out, jack up the tire, try and change the tire in the pouring rain. And this day that was going to be so great has turned out not to be so great. Well, that's a snapshot of somebody's morning. But a lot of times, this could be a snapshot of somebody's life, how they learn to filter the world. I have 5 little kids, and the one thing that I do is I make sure that each and every day they're filtering the world for this thing here, the excitatory. What do they enjoy doing? They enjoy dancing, they enjoy drawing, they enjoy playing with each other. But even when they're needing to do the chores around the house, taking the garbage out, doing the dishes, I think it's my job to teach them to do that in a way where they're having fun and they're excited about it. So they learn that work can be fun, that work can make a contribution, that work can be meaningful for other people. Some of my older kids' friends come home from school, and I say, we need 10 logs for the fire. And they look at me as if I got 15 heads. Like, you want me to go out and get logs and bring them in? Like, yeah. And they go, oh, okay. And they'll do it, but they'll do it in such a way where, it's like, I can't believe this guy's asking me to do this. Like, there you go, there's the fire. This is how a lot of us go about our daily work. Rather than it being an expression of the contribution that we can be making, what we've done is actually completely shut down our internal body systems to these excitatory neurons. And I'm going to tell you a few reasons why this may have happened, and some ways in which you can really, when you leave tonight at 8 o'clock, go out and begin to sort the world through this excitatory bias. So is everybody with me now? Yeah? Everybody understand my accent? Because I'm not from Brooklyn, right? You know that. Who here had career advice when they were in their teens? One at the back there. And just out of interest, how did you guys get into your first position? It was your hobby. Mm-hmm. For you as a guidance counselor, was it? Did any of you want to do something and you were told by a significant other that you could not do it? My experience, and I have some friends that are guidance counselors and some friends that are youth advisors, and I love them to death, but my experience is that they do the advice the wrong way around. If we remember back to the previous slide, we were talking about the inhibitory and the excitatory. Rather than starting at the excitatory of what's possible, they start with a limitation. So for example, I remember being 11 years old, and we did this project in school. It was called Ambitions. And my teacher was Mrs. O'Brien, and she was a nice teacher. I liked her. Went to see Mrs. O'Brien, and she said, so what's your ambition? I said, I'm going to be in the Beatles. And she looked at me and said, you can't be in the Beatles. The Beatles don't exist anymore. The Beatles already have enough members. They've finished all their records. And people like us don't go and make music for a living. Pick something that's a little more appropriate. 11 years old. It's not an uncommon story. I told you I was a high school phys ed teacher. One of my favorite things to do was avoid other teachers. Not that they were all bad, but there was this room, you guys call it, we call it the staff room, but you guys call it the teacher's lounge. Right, which was just a place to go if you wanted to get secondhand lung cancer. But I would go in there, and these people, these teachers would just be complaining about the kids, how they don't work, they don't get any respect, they don't, and they'd be sitting there with their cigarettes and their sandwiches, and I decided, I got an hour to myself at lunchtime. I don't want to be spending it here. So I used to go and spend it in my little phys ed office. And you guys seen little phys ed offices? They're about this big. So I used to hide away. And you'll like this one, Gene. I used to listen to Bob Dylan tapes. So I'd be sitting there hiding away, eating my lunch with Bob Dylan tapes. And I had a knock on the door. And there was these two girls, Kerry and, I'd love to remember the other one's name, Marie. Kerry and Marie knock on the door and said, "Can we join you for lunch?" I said, "Sure, come sit down." So they came and sat down, and we just started talking about life and what they were going to do. And I said, "So what are you going to do when you leave school?" And they said, "Oh, yeah, we'll probably get unemployment, see if we can get a hairdresser's apprenticeship." It's like, wow, this is like huge ambition. I said, "When do you go to college?" They said, "Well, us go to college." I said, "Yeah, sure." And the barriers to going to college back in the 1990s, in the UK, were zero compared to what we've got here. You would get paid to go. You would get a full scholarship just for showing up. And these girls were told over and again by teachers, by their parents, by their loved ones, that they weren't smart enough to get into college. And when I said to them, "Why don't you guys consider college? Because whatever you end up doing with your lives, it could give you a really good springboard onto that." So they went away, came back a few days later and said, "Do you think we could really get to college?" I said, "I don't think you can. I know you can." Well, with the advent of Facebook, Kerry stayed in contact with me. She ended up getting a phys ed degree. She hated phys ed, by the way. I don't know how she ever managed to get it. She got herself a phys ed degree, taught phys ed for 4 years, and has gone into semi-retirement to have her own family. Ended up marrying one of the other students from the school. But I think it really illustrates my point that a lot of times we start with a limitation. And once we do that, we're filtering the world in that inhibitory way. There's the stuff that we want to have happen becomes impossible for us to reach. So I say let's flip that around and let's get the sequence in the right order and start talking about possibility. What could you possibly do? And then, only then, after that's fully formed and fully in place, add in the limitations. Because there are limitations. There are financial limitations. There are skill limitations. I mean, as much as I want to, I am never going to win the Boston Marathon. I am just physically built in a different way than those little Kenyan guys that managed to run from Hopkinton to Boston in 2 hours. I did it last year. It took me 6 hours. I was pretty pleased with myself that I got there. But I'm not going to win that race because I'm a big guy. So Mrs. O'Brien, when I'm 11, tells me there's no way I'm going to be in the Beatles. Now, if I'm Mrs. O'Brien, an 11-year-old comes up to me and tells me they want to be in the Beatles, I'm like, "So what's your favorite Beatles song?" "Oh, that's a great one." "How did you get into the Beatles?" And we're talking about possibilities. We're firing up those excitatory neurons. We're having that conversation. So what is it about the Beatles that you want that really excites you? "Well, you know what? My dad plays guitar, and I go and see he'd play, and just my dad has this job that he doesn't really enjoy Monday through Friday, but when he's up on stage, I just see the look of sheer bliss on his face, and I really think I love playing the guitar, and I really want to do that for a living." Then we can start having the conversation. And then start telling the 11-year-old, "Well, you're going to have to work pretty hard in school because if you want to go on to a music college, those places are tricky to get into. If you want to go out, do your own thing, and start a band, the music industry is tough." I have a good friend who was a famous musician in England in the 1980s, a guy called Francis Dunnery, who was in a popular group called It Bites. And he is retired from the music industry. Still makes a living from music, but wants nothing to do with the music industry because it's so cutthroat. But what he does is he's found a way to make music and to support himself and his family, traveling around the world making music. He goes to, really, really great stuff, he goes to house parties and organizes house parties all around the world. So he's on the level of celebrity. He's not Lady Gaga, but he's not the guy in the bar like, playing on his own, he's kind of about here. But he's found a way to make a decent and sizable income doing the thing that he loves. So I'm going to put something out that is kind of a little bit heretical in our society. But we do have someone at the back that talked about their hobby becoming their career. Because a lot of the advice that we get is your passion's good for a hobby, but you're never going to make a career from it. And I just don't think that's true. I think your passion can be good for a hobby, and it's also a really good springboard for you to move forward into your career. But we don't ask this question of like, what do you enjoy doing? What's your fascination? And I heard this quote a couple of weeks ago, and to me it says it all. Faced with the choice between changing one's mind and proving there's no need to do so, almost everyone gets busy on the proof. Because if you live in a culture and a society that tells you that what you want to do in the world is unattainable, it's not reachable, very few people are going to have the wherewithal to say, I'm going to give it a go anyway, I'm going to give it a shot, I'm going to try and make it happen. We live in a society that just gets busy on this proof of, you can't do it. That you tried playing the guitar for 2 months and you never made a penny, so why don't you just go and become an accountant, because that's where the safety and the security is. I'd say that's where the safety and the security used to be, because there's an awful lot of unemployed accountants, a lot of unemployed doctors, a lot of unemployed lawyers across the country, because our society is really changing. And whereas the security used to be there in these types of professions 30, 40, 50 years ago, what we're seeing now is the people that are thriving in those industries, in those domains, in those jobs, they're kind of making their own security because they've found a different way to provide their services. Are you guys all patients and clients here? You're not. Right? I remember the first time I came into this office. Right? I'd met Gina through a networking group, and I remember walking through the door and just going, this is cool. This is really cool, because there was stuff for kids to play in the corner. I said, I like that. And it was, to me, apparent that they were running their business from their passion, the thing that they love doing, which is helping other people. As you can probably tell, I'm a person that goes through the world sorting and looking for this thing, and I'd found it instantaneously. I know, Gina, when you signed me up, I was already signed up from the moment I walked through the door, because I said, wow. These are people that get it, that they have a purpose and a contribution that they can make. Dr. Chris, who's the chiropractor here, is extraordinarily talented and extraordinarily skilled, has an immense level of knowledge. And each time I see him, I say, so what do you do at the weekend? He says, I was at a conference, I was at a seminar. He's just constantly learning, because he loves getting better at what he does to help other people. Which brings me to the school problem, as I call it. And to me, it's not so much of a problem with the individual teachers or the people who are going through school, but it's an institutional thing in the way we've set schools up. Because I don't meet too many people like Dr. Chris, that once they get their qualifications and they get their formal certificate, say, this is just the beginning. From here, I can learn so much more. A lot of the people I meet, the last time they opened up a book was when they were in first year at college. The average American reads, I think it's 1.2 books per year. But if you break the statistics down, there's about 5% of Americans reading about 95% of the books, which leaves 95% of the Americans doing not particularly much reading. A lot of television watching, a lot of movie watching, a lot of magazine reading, a lot of internet surfing now. So I say, why? Why don't we teach our young people in school, when they go in 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way up through 18 through 22 through 25, or however long we stay in school, to enjoy learning and to love learning. And one of the reasons is the reason schools were set up in the first place. There were schools when our country first started, and I can speak as an American because I'm now an American. I'm a two-year American. But our country mainly had religious schools up until about the early 1800s, about 1820, 1830. In about 1840, a lot of the business leaders and politicians got together and said, we as a country, we are falling behind. Right, look what's happening over in Europe. Germany, Britain, Spain. Spain's becoming an industrial power. We're getting left behind. We're an agricultural nation. We have plenty of land. But if we don't start getting some serious industry into this country, we are going to get left behind by what's happening in Europe. So a gentleman by the name of Horace Mann went over to Europe to see what they were doing and visited a place called Prussia, which is now part of Germany. And what they were doing is they were teaching kids how to comply, how to follow orders, how to follow instructions. And they would set them up in classrooms. There would be rows of kids sitting there. And they would teach them how to do very simple, basic menial tasks. Average reading, average writing, average arithmetic. Then every 30 minutes the bell would ring and they'd move on to somewhere else. And Horace Mann said, this is great because it's training them to just the level that we need to have these people go from the fields where they're doing their own thing in their own time to a factory which we can run 24 hours a day. We have artificial light. So we'll bring this system of schooling over to the US. Well, this is now in the mid-1840s. The first schools were set up over here in Massachusetts, in Boston. But he wanted this to be a national thing and went on a national crusade. At the time, there were no taxes. We didn't tax people, send them to school. But we told the businesses that we can train you, workers of the future, if you pay some money towards schools. For the business owners, it was a great deal. They would look benevolent. They would set up schools. For the people coming off of the fields and working 16-hour days for very little money, it was also a great deal. It was an opportunity. And for the country as a whole, well, we know what happened after 1860 in this country. We went from being this backwater to being a world powerhouse in about 50 years. And it was through places like Detroit, companies like Ford, companies like General Motors, industrial, I never get this word right, behemoths, large industrial companies. And it served us really well. Maybe it didn't serve the individual workers who were waking up in the morning, going to work on a factory line and doing the same menial task for 30, 40, 50 years. But the trade-off was at the end of their working life, they were given some money, they were given benefits, and they had the opportunity to go and retire and spend some time for themselves. Well, let's fast forward to the 2000s. We don't really need anybody to be following orders and following instructions anymore. How do we set our schools up? We have rows of kids sitting in desks, getting taught the basics, getting taught how to follow instructions, and when they have desires and wants of their own, they're told to be sublimated because the Beatles don't exist anymore. Because you'll never make any money doing the thing that you want to do. It's gotten really bad in the last 10 or 15 years, and I'll tell you why. A lot of you are familiar with brain structure, just real simple stuff, left and right brain. You got two areas here. You got a left brain, which is very sequential, a lot of math, a lot of problem solving and computing. And you got the right brain, which is very artistic, also responsible for a lot of movement. All of the stuff that's right-brained in the last 10 or 15 years has been chopped out of the curriculum. The dance, the art, the music, the phys ed. And the one that's gone in the last 5 or 6 years is the recess. 1/3 of schools in America don't have recess anymore. Just so we can have the kids sitting in their rows and try and learn the things that probably were really, really useful 80 or 100 years ago, but are not going to be so useful going forward now. The things that are going to be useful going forward are going to be ideas, creativity. But that comes from a different part of your brain. If you're sitting at a desk following instructions, you're using the left-hand side of your brain. If you're out dancing and moving, playing some music, doing some phys ed, running around in the playground, you're using the right-hand side of your brain. I think we need a combination of both. We need to be able to have individuals who are able to think sequentially, plan ahead, but also bring ideas and creativity. And when those two things come together, magical things happen. As this company started up about 15 years ago. I've forgotten its name. It begins with G. Goo. Sergey Brin and Larry Page both went to Montessori schools. You familiar with Montessori schools? Well, they do a lot more of the creativity stuff. They do a lot more of the just, here's some stuff, what can you do with it, rather than this is what you have to do with the stuff. And it's interesting. Brin and Page, one of them's highly left-brained, one of them's highly right-brained. But when the two of them came together, they formed something really magical. Go back a generation before that. Some guys out in Silicon Valley, Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak. One real outside-of-the-box thinker, highly right-brained, working with another guy that was just so good at the details, so good at the sequences. And when the two of them came together, they started this company called Apple that's been really probably the most enduring company of the last 40 years. So I'm not here to bash schools, I'm not here to bash teachers or the way that we want our kids to learn, because schools can teach an incredible amount of things to our kids. I think we need schools. I just think there needs to be a major overhaul, because we're still teaching, in many respects, to an industrial model that doesn't exist anymore. So when I'm talking to a client or potential client or even somebody I meet on the street, and I ask them what they really love doing, a lot of times they're not sure. They have a general sense that there are things that they enjoy doing, but they're not quite sure what their passion is. And I can't tell you the number of times I've had this conversation where I'll talk to someone about their job. How's your job? I hate it. It's terrible. My work stinks. It sucks. I hate that expression. It sucks. But I hear it over and over and over again. I say, well, you'll do something different. Well, I don't know what to do. Well, what do you enjoy? I don't know. And then this thing comes out, and it's almost like it's been programmed into us. They're like, I'm waiting for my passion to strike. It's just, to me, it's a long wait. And I've had this conversation with people in their teens, in their 20s, in their 30s, in their 40s. I have this conversation with someone in their 60s, and they're still waiting for their passion to strike. I just kind of want to say, you know what, it may not be striking you pretty soon. You may have to go out and start finding your passion, finding what it is that you can do, finding what it is that you can offer. And what I've found a lot of times is when they do, they don't need to be going out and changing careers and changing jobs. They can be reorienting themselves within their organization. They can be showing up in a different way. They can say, you know what, maybe I don't get paid to manage this place, but somebody's got to take care of this place. And they step up in really small ways. Maybe they see an opportunity within their organization, because now they're sorting for possibility that they didn't think was there before. So they go up and they say, I want to move departments. And of course they hear, you don't need to move departments, you do it fine where you are. You know, we'll get somebody else to fill that position, you're doing great. Would you take that answer? A lot of people do. Or would you say, you know what, I just need to convince this person more that I really want to try something different, try something new, because I feel that I'm going to make a greater and more significant contribution in a different position within this organization. But for me, it's not about waiting for your passion to strike, because I think it's an endless, endless wait. It's really a key for procrastination, and a key and a way to just waste a tremendous amount of time. I see 14-year-olds starting up tech companies. I go, yeah, those guys got it. They're not waiting for their passion to come to them. At 14, they may be starting up their tech company, which may fail. The next one may fail, and they may end up going into a completely different industry, different line of business. But by the time they get there, those failures, so-called failures that they've had, if they don't take them personally, are going to build into incredible successes. The Chicken Soup for the Soul guys, you know those folks? What are their names? Mark Victor Hansen and those books were popular, still reasonably popular, but 10, 12 years ago, they were the real bestsellers. Right? It took them 142 different publishing houses before that they would get accepted. 143rd time they pitched their idea, some tiny little company said, all right, we'll take a shot with you. Like they could have given up at any point. How heartbreaking if they'd given up at 139, not knowing they were 3 more pitches away from greatness for them. But when you start filtering the world for possibility and what you can offer, I think there's an inner strength that you begin to build and you begin to have so that you can just understand that every time somebody tells you no, somebody gets in your way, it's not about you. It's about them wanting to keep things in place, keep the status quo as it is. Anyone pronounce that? This is a Hungarian psychologist by the name of Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. He came over from Hungary at an early age, now works out in the Midwest, was over at one of our local schools, Harvard, for a while. Spent his life studying the workplace and people within the workplace and the workspace, and came out with some really, really interesting findings. The first thing he found was that there was a state that people that enjoyed their work and felt they were making a contribution would get into. And he calls it a generic thing called flow, like a flow state. Best example would probably be the basketball player Michael Jordan. Everyone familiar with Michael? Probably the best basketball player of his generation, if not of all time. Chicago Bulls, won numerous championships. Tried to play baseball, that didn't work out so well for him, but went back to the NBA and won more championships because he worked out what he was good at. But he was willing to fail, willing to fall down, trying something different. He missed 43 game-winning shots where his team could have won at the end of the game. He made more than that, but 43 times he was given the ball and his team lost because of what he did. But really didn't consider himself a failure, just get up and move on to the next time. So when he was asked about what it was like playing basketball when things were really going well for him, he said, an interesting thing happens. It's like everything really slows down. Time almost stands still. Everything goes quiet. And I get into the zone. And all of you have had times like this where you've, again, just felt unstoppable, felt like you can just make things happen. You felt really powerful, really empowered. But for Michael Jordan, it was being in the zone. So Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, over a period of 30 years, has studied people who get into that state, who get into this flow state while they're working. And this is from an extraordinarily broad range of careers, from administrative careers to sales, through management, through sports, through art, dance, through education. And it's found that some people are able to derive a tremendous amount of satisfaction and success through their work, and other people doing exactly the same job are unable to do that. He says this state that you could get into, which he calls flow, which I'm going to say there's a kind of a level beyond that, which is idiosyncratic. Like for Michael Jordan, it was in the zone. Michael Jordan may have been in the zone. His teammates may have a completely different term for it. They may say, like this, I feel like I'm on fire. Or like this, I feel like I can achieve anything. So it's a really idiosyncratic thing. But this general state of flow, and study after study, peer-reviewed study, he has over 500 of these out now, has found that if you're able to find a state of flow in your work, that these things happen for you. Time kind of stands still, it stops. You lose a sense of time. You almost lose a sense of who you are. You're so involved in what you do that you're not looking at the clock. You're not thinking about anything else. You're only focused on the thing that you're doing, whether it's accounts, whether it's writing a really good sales advertisement for a magazine. But the really interesting thing for me is the things that the benefits of the people that are able to find this within their work do. And they're listed there. To a person, they have significantly better health, much longer life expectancy. They get paid more. I think most of his studies show between people who like what they do and enjoy what they do and have picked a career based around their skills, their talents, and their fascinations and interests, get paid between 30 and 40% more than the rest of the workforce. They get a tremendous amount of satisfaction. Work for them is a part of who they are. It's not something that's separate. They show up for work and they go there with an intention, with a purpose. And usually the purpose is to serve somebody else, to help another person. Those that are unable to get into this flow state put their attention on themselves and the things that they're not getting. Again, filtering the world through that inhibitory bias of the things that you don't have rather than things that you do have. And to a person, everybody in this study finds fulfillment in their work. I'm going to pass this one out a little bit because what he finds is it's not just a case of doing what you're good at, doing what you love and doing what you enjoy, but you have to be significantly challenged. There has to be an element of challenge in your work. Otherwise, even the greatest job becomes mundane to you. I'm going to start to wrap it up now and talk about career direction and career. So I think anybody that's got a direction in their career, they're on the right path. A sense of direction. Well, once you have that sense of direction of what it is that you love doing, I think you're about 5% there. So the people that are waiting for their passion to come, waiting for their passion to strike, are just waiting for the 5%, which isn't the most important thing. And when a client comes to me and asks me, where do I start? I say, where would you like to start? I say, just start somewhere, but you've got to start. It's like the journey of the 1,000 miles. It starts with the first step. Until you do that first step, it doesn't start. But if you begin to really drill down deeply for your fascinations, your interests, you'll find something that gets your juices flowing, that helps you wake up in the morning excited. That's your 5%. But the other 95% is doing what Dr. Chris does. And that's the hard work, the due diligence, becoming the expert of what it is that you offer. Whether it's being a chiropractor, or whether it's like my good friend Tim Cornu, who's a motor mechanic. But just every time I talk to him about changing a tire, his whole body just like, I'm like, oh, you're not going to believe this car came into me. And he tells me this story. And he absolutely loves what he does. Just his face lights up. And his whole body changes when he begins to talk about automotives and cars. And this guy is one of the funniest presenters I've ever seen, who talks about stories about various car shops he worked at as a kid, learning and constantly learning to become the great motor mechanic that he is. But he was open to it. He found something that really he enjoyed doing, and he stuck with it. And he did his apprenticeship. He did his time. He learned from some incredibly great mechanics, and he learned from some incredibly poor mechanics. But what he did was he was learning how to become a master at his trade. And he is. And he's up in Wayland on Route 20. And so, a quick plug for him, because he's a guy that just absolutely loves his work. And I love, once in a while, I get the opportunity to go out for lunch with him. And I sit down, and he's like a little tired. And I say, so tell me about that Mercedes you got. The Mercedes. So find that thing that you do, that you want to be doing. Or within your current position, find that place where you can begin to make a contribution, where you can make a difference, where you can really show up in a way that goes beyond you and is all about the contribution you can make to others. One of my favorite fighters, remember Muhammad Ali? He used to come up with these rhymes and these poems like float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, and I'm so fast. Every time, when I turn the light switch off, I'm in bed before it goes dark, and all of this stuff. And he says one of the shortest poems of all time was one that says, Adam, Adam. It's all about fleas. I think it's a guy called Robert Browning came up with it. But Muhammad Ali said, no, I can do a shorter one. And he was out at a boxing match in Kenya, and he was with his African-American people. And he was asked to say something to them, and he just said, me, we. A guy that got his contribution wasn't how much money he could make, how many championships he could win. His contribution was, how can I help the people around me through this exalted position I've got as world heavyweight boxing champion? And the guy went through some pretty significant downtimes in his life. He was jailed, had his boxing belt stripped away, refused to go to Vietnam. He was a conscientious objector. But when he was released, rebuilt his career, rebuilt who he was. And I believe he did it because he wasn't doing it for himself, ever. He was doing it because of the contribution he would make to others. And that, to me, is where fulfillment lays. So I'm going to wrap it up there. If any of you want any more information, you can check out my website. I have a bunch of interviews with people that do some really great things with their careers. They share a whole bunch of ideas and strategies, from vets to people that are doing great stuff on the internet, through marketing people, through personal development coaches. There's about 20 interviews on there. Feel free to just jump on there. They're all free to download. That's me, and that's my little boy Xander, who is an absolute treat to be around. And I'm going to finish up there. So thank you.